Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Secrets of Flow. This is the weekly time. It's 12 o'clock noon Tuesday in my time zone, or potentially different time in the time zone where you are, and I take this hour to speak live, unscripted, and unedited, largely improvised, about some important topic about improving how we work, how we manage, how we achieve some outcomes for our businesses in customers, particularly in modern, technology-heavy, knowledge-intensive industries. I'm Alexei Zaglov speaking from my place in Toronto. This is what I do every week on Tuesdays. Today, our topic will be, I chose the title Customers Over Backlogs or Customers Before Backlogs. And the premise of this topic is this. Very often, managers and teams have to make daily decisions, such as they've got some work in progress, they've got some upcoming work. They operate within some process framework that exists somehow in their company. And they aren't exactly set up to make these decisions with clarity. The work items that they may have to prioritize, such as, do I choose this or that? Does this rank higher in priority order than this? When should I start? How do we even call these things? And it's difficult to have an effective conversation about this, leading to good decision, if everything is called, let's say, a ticket. Right? So here's a backlog of tickets, and they represent all the work we have to get done. And here's some tickets in progress. So should I pull this ticket? Should I work on that ticket? Who should I assign this ticket to? And so on and so forth. This is the language that people often use to discuss these things and then to make decisions. Now, the language, of course, may be very limiting if everything is a ticket. Sometimes different words are used, such as a product backlog item. Everything is a product backlog item. Well, it was created in the backlog. It represents potentially some customer request or need. It's written down on some kind of card. Nowadays, of course, cards are usually electronic. So there's some kind of tool where you can create them, and then you can drag these rectangular cards across the screen. That visualizes some kind of work process. So everything is a backlog item, and this word even struck me when, let's say, companies that were my clients in early stages of our engagement overused this word, because they even called work in progress backlog items. It's not in the backlog anymore. It's in progress. We took it out of the backlog, and now we're actively working on it. It's not in the backlog anymore. But they still called it a product backlog item. Then it's done. It's ready for customer. And they're making a release plan. They're handing it over to the customer, and yet they still call it a product backlog item. So that very term, product backlog item, makes it kind of difficult to connect to customer needs, because customers don't kind of speak this language. Customers don't request product backlog items, right? They have different needs, different wants, desires, requirements. And it's somewhat unnatural for a customer to say, I want a product backlog item such and such, right? So it's a limiting language. There are sometimes other words. One in particular struck me also is using it as the word Jira. Now, Jira is, of course, a very well-known work management tool, quite popular with technology companies and IT departments of various non-technology companies. So it's a tool, but it's a product, right? But it's also sometimes the word is used to describe a specific instance or installation of that product. So let's say if your company licensed Jira as a product, you have a local instance where you manage all the work that is happening in your company, and let's say you have a Jira administrator. Well, that administrator does the administration work on this particular Jira instance. And then let's say somebody who works at this company goes up to their colleague, asks for help, and is met with the following response. Yeah, I could help you, but first you have to create a Jira for that. So the word Jira here is meant as one particular ticket or card in that particular instance of Jira, the product, right? That card, ticket, or product backlog item that will eventually appear in somebody's backlog, somebody's work in progress on one of those visual management boards, and they will work on it. I wonder if you are watching right now. Now, if you're watching this later, then you can type it in the comments, but I'm just curious as to what other terms you have heard people use in your company, or maybe in your previous company, or if you worked as a consultant or contractor, potentially at your client companies. How do they describe these units of work, these discrete units of work that managers and teams can schedule, prioritize, track from, let's say, start to finish using some kind of management tool or some kind of process framework, whatever it is that they use at their company. So I gave you a few examples such as tickets, cards, Jiras, product backlog items, and so on and so forth. So feel free to chime in and just type your examples in the chat. I would like to however, reflect on all these terms, and this, I think, is an important problem, and that was motivation for my choice of topic today, is that all these words tend to obfuscate reality, and they limit our language, and they limit our ability to make good decisions and do the right thing for our customers, right? So words like product backlog item or ticket or Jira, Jira in the sense of a particular card, not Jira the product, they basically turn the work, whether it's current work or upcoming work, into a gray mass that is not differentiated in any way. And that makes it difficult to make decisions with confidence and clarity. So today, my main goal is to try to add color to this gray picture and see the variety of customer demand that actually occurs in the real world, right? So what we're going to do today is to try to see variety in this homogenized picture of product backlog items. So I'm going to start maybe a small mind map, just so that we maybe preserve whatever the outline of what I'm going to say today in some compact form. So I'm going to switch to my favorite collaboration tool, Miro, just like that. and start a very simple mind map. So, and I'm going to start with a very important point, is that I'm going to call it demand. So instead of calling something a backlog or whatever, I'm going to use a more general term, because customers generally place some kind of demand upon the business, upon whatever organization we're running that tries to serve those customer needs. So demand that we're going to serve. So first, I want to point out that there are usually several different kinds of demand, and this right away gives us the picture, the interesting picture, that not everything is a ticket, but they kind of come in several different kinds. And this is almost obvious, but once in a while, and actually quite regularly, I run into situations in workplaces where, again, people see everything as a ticket, everything as a PBI, and it makes it difficult for them to actually make good decisions about priorities, about scheduling, and whatnot. So one major type of demand is, of course, value demand, and this is the reason why our team exists, why our company exists. This is the main kind of bread and butter type of work that we do and deliver to our customers. Then another very significant type of demand, and this is, it actually has a somewhat academic name, but the term has been used in research literature about process improvement for quite some time. It's called failure demand. So failure demand is everything that has to do with something we didn't quite get right the first time, and now customers having some kind of problem, and they're calling us with an urgent request to fix it. So something is broken. Well, it shouldn't have been broken, but it is, and customers want us to fix it. And we usually have to preempt some of the value-adding work. We have to pay very close attention, potentially treat with great urgency, potentially expedite, maybe allocate some staff on a temporary basis to attend to this urgent customer problem. It could be a bug in our technology, could be some kind of incident, outage, and so on and so forth. Now, a very simple relationship between the two types of demand is that when it comes to failure demand, we don't actually get paid for it, right? Customers generally don't pay for these things, right? They already paid us when we delivered the product to them, or when they signed up for some kind of service, which is our value demand. Right? So failure demand, well, nobody says, well, we want to fix, we fixed 100 bugs last month. We would rather fix 1,000, right? So fixing it 10 times as many bugs isn't exactly seen as an improvement or a worthy goal in business, right? So actually, if anything, we would prefer to fix 10 bugs rather than 100, because, well, the other 90 bugs, well, they never happened, right? Because our product was of such higher quality. So simply the amount of failure demand, if we can observe it and simply count the number of incidents, outages, bugs, all sorts of customer issues that we'd rather not have, we can quantify it and use as a proxy metric for the quality of our product or service. And here's an interesting thing. The value demand and the failure demand often place some demand on the same capacity, on the shared capacity somewhere inside our company. It could be the same product team that first built a product with a bug in it, and then that bug came to them later. Now they have to fix it. and that causes them to pause some work on, let's say, the next product feature or version. So if we have a lot of failure demand, it basically squeezes out the capacity of our organization to serve value demand, right? Which is actually what earns money in the long term for the company. So sometimes this trade-off of value demand versus failure demand happens within maybe even one product team, but sometimes it happens more on the organizational scale. And so in particular, if let's say you're a senior manager, you are, let's say, managing a fairly large organization, multi-team organization, and I have seen situations like this. Let's say there is several hundred people in, let's say, IT department of a particular company, and well, maybe about 100 of them work on teams that actually create new product features, new solutions for customers, and the rest of the department is basically occupied with fixing all sorts of defects and keeping the lights on. So that's basically half of the organization's capacity is spent serving failure demand, which means the organization doesn't have as much capacity, such as the number of people, the budget, and so on, to actually work on things that generate value for customers and potentially future revenue. So figuring out how to reduce failure demand, building quality in, is a really important component of, has to be a very important component of strategy in a company like this. So I want to go back and just continue building this mind map. A very important source of demand that we have to pay attention to is improvement suggestions. And customers often don't actually explicitly request this. So very often this demand comes from within the organization. So we may invest in certain practices, certain redesign of our product that makes it let's say, a higher quality, which allows us to spend less time in the future fighting all sorts of fires and fixing defects and restoring outages. But we do have to invest in it first, right? And if we don't do it, well, in the future, we will almost certainly see much higher failure demand, squeezing out our ability to actually serve value demand. So these three types of demand, all competing for the same shared capacity, are quite often common in all knowledge work, technology, creative, professional service type of organizations. And it's important that the company has capacity to deal with all three. And if failure demand is currently very high, and that's usually an indicator that something isn't quite right with the process, how we build our product, how we deliver it, because that process creates bugs. It creates defects, it creates future incidents and outages, and that comes back to us as a failure demand in such large quantity. So it means we need to make some investments in improvement while holding the fort on failure demand, and yet allowing some capacity to go forward with some new products and features and solutions for our customers. So we have to handle all three kinds of demand in some proportion at the same time, and we need to have a strategy that ultimately reduces the amount of failure demand to preferably a negligible percentage so that we can actually spend most of our time and most our capacity on value-adding customer products and services and solutions. So these are three very basic types of demand, and I should perhaps point out there is a fourth, which is, and I'm gonna use maybe not such a nice word to describe it. It's speculative demand. It's something that doesn't have a very clear value. We're kind of making some kind of bet on the future. We are potentially exploring some future solution that may not even have a customer just yet. This happens very often in technology companies and IT organizations where they build some kind of prototype of a solution that may not have a customer yet. But we do need to build a prototype to perhaps learn something about the problem space so that when, let's say, the customers are actually asking for this, we have a very clear path, technical path to how we can satisfy their needs and build a solution for them. So we have established a technical feasibility on it, and it's quite often you can observe in technology companies that some of the employees are actually working on these sorts of solutions. Something that customers aren't yet asking for, but still this kind of work happens. And here it's very important to understand connection to the company strategy. If, let's say, our our company's market is highly uncertain, that means we need all sorts of prototypes potentially in progress, all sorts of exploratory work on half-baked ideas, so that some of them can turn into good products that have their market fit and can generate future revenue for the company. If we don't do that, well, it won't happen. At the same time, if we are in a much more stable market where customer needs are much better understood, technical capabilities are also quite stable, we shouldn't be spending nearly as much time or resources or use as many people in our company doing this sort of work, right? So it's interesting about how about 20 years ago, a whole methodological improvement movement known as Kanban started at a certain sustaining engineering group that was spending 40% of their time basically doing detailed estimates on the work, that half of which would be discarded, and that basically completely reduced the team's capacity to do the work that customers actually needed, right? So that was a kind of capacity allocation across different types of customer demand, kind of getting out of balance. So spending too much time on speculative demand and leaving too little capacity for value demand. So that's the basic variety of the kinds of demand. And now I want to expand on the value demand, because this isn't exactly one kind of homogeneous set of customer needs. So value demand, I would suggest looking at two kinds of it. We also need to not to treat it as one homogeneous gray mass, and we need to see some color in it, some variety. And one way to do it is to look at different customer segments. So multiple customer segments. And it's a quite common situation in a lot of businesses that you don't serve just one customer. You serve a variety of customers and they're not all the same. So there's usually some kind of market strategy around market segmentation. You have different customer segments and you intend to serve them differently, perhaps with different solutions, different product offerings, different levels of service, potentially, because those market segments have, let's say, well, different needs and different criteria for their satisfaction with your product. And seeing, again, different work items in your backlog or different items in your work in progress as coming from different market segments, as originating from different market segments, intending to serve needs of different customers. That's a very powerful tool for being able to make good decisions. So not everything is just a gray product backlog item. It's, something we're building for this perhaps premium customer segment versus something that we are building for, let's say, a more basic customer segment, right? So, and our strategy may basically send a very clear signal about what is of higher priority, right? So it can make for a very easy decision if we understand which customer segment this work originated from. And another, and I should say, perhaps just give an example. So some time ago, a manager of a product team in a software company approached me. I think his name was Jason. So Jason led a team that developed an analytics product for his company. It was a relatively new product that clients could install on top of like the main product that they bought from this company, and it gave them access to some cool new analytic features. So Jason's team approach adopted some iterative development process, weekly or bi-weekly, I don't remember exactly what it was, sprints, some planning, a big product backlog, a shorter backlog for the next sprint, some work in progress, something is done, something is not yet done what was committed in the previous sprint. And Jason framed the problem as that he and the team struggled with prioritization. It was very difficult for them to just decide, should they, start this feature next or that feature or that feature. How do they tell? What's the decision? What's the way to make the decision, rather than just one at a time, some kind of ad hoc approach. And so what we did with Jason was a very simple, what I like to call demand analysis. So we just actually look at who the customers are for this product. And it turned out this was a relatively new product. So there was potentially some future market for it, and some features had to be built for that market. There were also several key customers that wanted to be the early adopters of this analytics product, and they requested various features to be built for them, and they were actually willing to pay for it, thus effectively funding development of the product for perhaps future generations of customers. So clearly you would treat requests from such marquee customers, effectively custom software development built for them, right, and later refactored as a core feature of the future product, perhaps with higher priority and higher urgency. You would attach a higher value to it than perhaps some of the ideas for potentially future customers in this. But in any way, it helped make a decision. It helped Jason make better decisions if everyone could see that a particular feature request came from a particular marquee customers, and there was only a handful of them that was requesting a feature. But now it gets interesting. Some of the work that was coming in wasn't actually about new product feature development at all. Just because of the nature of this field, analytics, data, statistics, and so on, some clients actually requested not a software feature to be developed, but they actually requested research. And interestingly, Jason's team had 3 PhDs in data science on the team. It's not typical software development team, cross-functional software development team. And these 3 people were skilled to do this kind of research. Now, the customer would pay for the research. They would get the results of the research, some kind of report. But at the same time, the process of this research could potentially reveal what features could be built into, let's say, the future products. So what sort of analysis of data and statistics by this emerging analytics product could potentially be useful to its future users. So of course, only 3 people on Jason's team could handle this sort of research request. The rest of the team wouldn't be able to handle it, but they would be occupied with perhaps building some features, whether for marquee customers or for all other customers. And very quickly, and of course add to this some amount of failure demand and some bugs to fix that happened too. Now we clearly begin to clearly see color in Jason's gray backlog, right? There are several distinct types of work items. All of them are somehow connected to different customer needs, such as research requests, marquee features, all other product features, and defects, and potentially internally sourced improvement suggestions, right? So at least 5 different types of work. And another important message here was that you cannot really prioritize one of these types of work over the other. You have to handle them effectively concurrently. Yes, you can sometimes maybe dedicate a week or 2 to, let's say, working on one particular type of request. Maybe it's a super urgent feature from this marquee customer, or maybe it's some kind of really nasty defect that you have to drop everything and fix. But in general, you have to find a way to serve all sources of demand almost concurrently. You cannot leave any of them without at least some basic decent service for a long period of time. Right? So the pattern that didn't work for Jason and his Scrum team was that of a sprint focus. So let's focus on just one thing, just one goal for the next 2 weeks, and put everything else on the back burner. It will be in focus of the next sprint, in the next, and the next. When you have 5 different sources of demand, doing a round robin on them doesn't serve any of these customers well enough, because somebody is almost guaranteed to have to wait 3 or 4 2-week sprints for their turn. This is not going to meet their needs. All right. And also, again, due to some specialization, fragmentation on the team, some work could be routed to the part of the team, some work had to be routed somewhere else. It made no sense to create a single focus for a week or 2 weeks for the entire team. the demand had to be served concurrently, and whatever decision mechanism that JSON was going to implement had to acknowledge the reality of 5 sources of demand, some level of concurrency, and some way of routing different demand to different team members. So that's one possible example. I also want to discuss maybe a different pattern that we often see in value demand, and that is seasonal demand. So actually a lot of businesses are seasonal. So somehow there is this, sometimes there's an annual cycle, and we cannot really change it. The Earth rotates around the sun. Seasons change, and in businesses such as financials, retail, there is a certain times of the year when customers want more of something, and there are seasons, there's like dead seasons when they don't want any of these things. And so if we pay attention to work items coming into the backlogs, we can see that some customer segments are highly seasonal, some of them more steady, and that begins to give us ideas of, again, how we can break down this entire volume of customer demand into easy to understand segments that we need to handle concurrently and somewhat flexibly. One good example of the industry where this happens a lot is education. And I want to give a shout out to one of my friends, and he actually watches these videos quite often, sometimes live, and posts in chat. It's Jim Bennett from Saskatoon, and for the international audience that's in Western Canada. Jim has lots of experience in the education industry, and so I learned a lot from him about how to manage demand in that type of environment. So what happens in education is, of course, the start of the school year, September. Somehow school calendars, at least in the Western world, revolve around this annual cycle, somehow maybe connected to ancient agricultural cycles. But September is an extremely busy time for any kind of technology service in the education industry, because teachers, students, campus administrators return to work. There's a lot of new courses, logins to various accounts. Suddenly the use of all sorts of computing equipment and networks increases. Various problems occur, and this creates pretty steady demand of tickets. Right, so customer support requests, customer problems, something that requires attention, something that, let's say, some customer support team has to deal with and fix. And then the start of school year demand subsides eventually, all outstanding requests are fulfilled, and this is less busy time. Now, what does, let's say, IT department of, let's say, an educational institution doing outside September? Do they have like 11 months of doing nothing? Yeah, of course not. But now they can work on all sorts of longer term projects, such as upgrading existing facilities, replacing some old equipment, creating some kind of useful applications for all the users in their organization. And actually some of those applications may enable customers to actually help themselves next September rather than call help desk. So some of the problems can be resolved that way, and that can result in perhaps a smaller number of customer support tickets that we'll see next time, and all sorts of boosting security, and that's a big concern in the in present environment, is also another project that could perhaps take place during the low season. So, seeing seasonal patterns in demand, how some types of work exhibit a highly seasonal pattern with big spikes, other types of customer demand don't have such spikes. They come in at a relatively even pace. This allows us again to break down this kind of gray homogeneous mass of backlog and see the variety and then respond to handling it differently. So in the education industry, there is usually some kind of pattern where some capacity, and that really means some people and whole teams, are shifted from serving one type of demand to serving something else. So for example, we can slow down some work on long-term projects in September and simply use more people and teams to handle the spike in seasonal customer service demand. Once that demand subsides, we can shift them back to work on long-term projects and so on. So seasonal shifts of allocation, that's a policy, let's say, an organization can adopt if it has a lot of seasonal spikes in their demand. All right, I now want to discuss kind of yet another kind of dimension of looking at backlogs, and in particular talk about delayed demand. So that's everything that's in the backlog. So yes, there's some work in progress, and there's some demand from our customers has already arrived, but we haven't actually started working on it, handling it, and so it forms a backlog, right? So what is the backlog really? Well, and now I want to point out several useful patterns. So sometimes the backlog isn't exactly the backlog of customer requests exactly. And sometimes we just have a perspective of, here's our team, here's the work it's doing right now, here's the work that is planned and scheduled, already requested of the team, but we're not doing it, and we call it a backlog. What happens sometimes is that actually this backlog isn't the backlog of customer requests at all. It's just the middle of the process queue. And it's perhaps an output, the done state of some other team or department in the same company. And how did the work get to that other team or department? Well, maybe from some customer request. So sometimes a team with their team's backlog can be actually quite insulated from the actual customer demand and customer needs. And it's important to see this kind of pattern. We often experience this kind of pattern as consumers when, let's say, we call a customer support line of, let's say, some big business that to whom we are customers. So let's say we call their customer support, we report a problem, then they handle it, and let's say the company offered us some refund. And now they say, okay, well, now I'm going to transfer you to the payments department, and they will basically work with you to make sure that you get your refund. And they put you on hold, and you listen to elevator music for several minutes, and then somebody picks up the phone and says, "Hello, I'm Mike from payments team. How can I help you today?" Right? And from the payments team point of view, those minutes that you listen to the music on the phone while on hold, you were in their backlog. But from your point of view, you were simply in some intermediate stage of that end-to-end process that started with your original call, and then the first customer representative who handled your problem. Now you're in this queue, and then you're going to be hopefully served by the payments team, and hopefully then you can hang up and the issue is solved. Right? So you were not in the backlog. It wasn't like you were in the middle of the process queue. And this often happens in various technology organizations where there is, let's say, a platform team that can build some kind of enhancement to the platform, and then, well, except no customers can see it. Right? It's hidden within the platform. But let's say several months later, another team builds, let's say, some mobile app feature that uses that feature on the platform, and now there is an actual button in the mobile app that you can use, that the customer can use. So from a customer's point of view, the waiting time between, let's say, the platforms team doing the work and, let's say, the mobile apps team doing the work, that isn't really a backlog at all. This is just a mid-process queue. And of course, if we could make that queue shorter and time in that queue shorter, or perhaps eliminate it altogether, we could perhaps significantly shorten the time to market of that particular mobile app feature that, let's say, our customers were eager to use. So sometimes backlogs are just that. They are mid-process queues. And let's just write this down. So this is a mid-process queue that perhaps stands in a way between us and, let's say, greater agility, faster time to market, and a better connection to our customers and their needs. And I'd like to point out maybe another variation of like everything in the backlog, so the work that is not started yet. What is exactly in that backlog? And now, like maybe earlier in this speech, I kind of sliced the backlog horizontally, right? Multiple types of demand, multiple customer segments, right? But so I kind of took the backlog top to bottom, but sliced it horizontally. Let's say the start line is vertical on, let's say, some visual board. But now I actually want to slice it vertically. And see actually how close some of these backlog items are, how close they are to the starting line. And it turns out that some of them are pretty close. We could actually prioritize, select, commit, decide to start the work on this customer need or request tomorrow. The team goes to work, some time later it's done, and we deliver it to the customer. It was in a ready state like this. And sometimes the cards, tickets, probably backlog items in a backlog are not quite like that. They are half-baked ideas. And sometimes they are completely raw. It's just an idea. And maybe it has a market, maybe it has a customer, maybe it has some justification. Maybe we have even tried to some kind of ascertain its business value. Maybe we try to establish some technical feasibility for it, and maybe we don't have any of that. It's just an idea. And that idea has a long way to go before it becomes a real option that we could actually exercise tomorrow and start work and deliver this to our customer. So ideas can be at any stage of elaboration, from a rough initial idea to perhaps establishing some kind of business case and technical feasibility and justification of why we should do it, and when should we start work on this. So one practical advice, when you see this sort of situation, if you look at the backlog closely, you will probably be able to sort which of the items are relatively close to start because they have a very clear case why we should do it and when, and others just being rough ideas, and maybe some of them somewhere in between, still requiring maybe some prototyping, maybe some market research, some kind of business justification why we should do it, and so on. So seeing your backlog in that way, again establishes connection to customers and their needs. All right, so let's have one last look at the mind map, and I think I just need to write this down just so that we preserve this. So the backlog is really a mix, and it's a mix of things like real options. So this is, or ready options. I would even put it like this. Things are ready to start, something we could actually do tomorrow, have a reasonable expectation of delivering it to customers. And other things could be actually just half-baked ideas. And here it may be advisable to avoid premature commitment, because maybe, there is a saying, it sounded like a good idea at the time. But perhaps with a little bit more research work, a bit more prototyping, maybe some way of exploring the market, we could get very close to the starting line and turn this half-baked idea into a ready option. Or if it doesn't work, well, we'll get better ideas. And of course, the new ideas that are perhaps a little too early to bring to your regular prioritization or planning meeting. They just need more work to be done on them before commitment. So that's a rough summary of what I wanted to say today about customers and backlogs. And the main message is that we need to see variety in customer demand, different types of demand, different customer segments, different needs, and find appropriate ways to express that variety in our process frameworks, in our ways of working, in our language that we use with our colleagues as we discuss work, leading up to decisions, what we're gonna do when, and how we're gonna serve our customers. And we should also see that sometimes what we call the backlog isn't really a backlog, it's something else. And sometimes that backlog also contains a mix of various things that are in various degrees of readiness to start. And if they're ready, then it's one kind of decision. If they're not yet ready, then it's a different kind of decision. So, folks, thank you very much for watching today. As usual, I appreciate, of course, if you tell your colleagues, if you subscribe, if you let's say, stay tuned for next week's announcements. So I'll probably pick a topic for next week by tomorrow or Thursday morning. Thank you very much and goodbye.